Hello, friends. This is David, and welcome back to Darkest True Crime Headlines for June 3rd, 2022. Our first story: Chicago mother killed 8-year-old daughter because she believed the girl, quote, didn't love her anymore, says prosecutors. Chicago. A day after a child welfare worker visited her uptown home, Andrielle Hogler walked up to her sleeping 8-year-old daughter and slipped a plastic bag over her head, according to police. Maria Osby woke up and began screaming, "Mama, stop," but Hogler continued to hold the girl down, according to police and prosecutors. Hogler, who had drank bleach, then put the bag over her own head and laid next to her daughter on the bed. That's how Hogler's brother-in-law found them when he came by the first-floor apartment in the 4600 block of North Winthrop Avenue around 11 a.m. Wednesday, police said. Maria was dead, but Hogler was still alive, police said. The brother-in-law called his wife, who called 911. Paramedics tried to tend to her, but Hogler, quote, stiffened her arms and body and refused to release hands, a police report states. Truly terrible. I'm going to skip forward just a little bit to see if we can get some more insight into her motive before I react this story. In a statement to detectives, Hogler said she killed her daughter because, quote, she thought the girl didn't love her anymore. She was taking her dad's side, Assistant State's Attorney James Murphy said. She felt it was their time to go. Wow. So I didn't see. Let me quickly search and see if this was a divorce or anything. Why would she be so concerned about loving the father? No mention of a divorce. I guess purely she just felt jealousy that the child preferred one parent. Oh, that's awful. And DCFS, Child Protection, Family Services, presumably, said it had prior contact with this family and that the family had participated in intact family services from a substance abuse-related incident in 2017. The recent visit was the result of an allegation of domestic violence and was the first contact with the family since the prior case in 2018. One more thing I will say about this story is that if that was truly her only motivation, that she felt that her daughter didn't love her anymore, first of all, an 8-year-old loves their parents in a way that cannot be matched. So that seems disingenuous or detached from reality on its face to me. But if that's really her only motivation, that makes this mother no better than any stalker ex who killed someone because they didn't love them anymore. It's so far from an actual excuse. It spits in the face of a rationalization. This kind of story where a mother attacks her own offspring is, of course, common and terrible. It's happened for probably forever. I remember being a little kid and hearing about mothers who did this, but often they will say that they believed on some level that they were protecting their children by sending them to the next life or something, and it's more of a derangement. This seems more like a jealous, cold, calculated murder, and that, in a way, makes it much worse. For our second story today, injured cyclist froze to death after PCSOs called off search in under 10 minutes. Jacqueline Parsons, 56, froze to death after police were sent to find her. A woman who fell off her bike in a cemetery froze to death after PCSOs couldn't be bothered to get out of their car to look for her. Wow, I didn't realize that was the context of it. So she was very nearby, it seems, and could have easily been saved if just a more thorough search had taken place. Let's read on. The family of Jacqueline Parsons have received a payout from Humberside Police, whose officers called off their search after less than 10 minutes. A passerby saw the cyclist fall in October 2018 and called the police from home as he didn't have a mobile, fearing she'd be locked in overnight. But Jacqueline, 56, was left to die, and her body was discovered by a dog walker the following morning in Western Cemetery in Hull, East Yorkshire. Humberside Police have now agreed a settlement with her loved ones, who accuse the force of breaching its duty of care. Jacqueline's heartbroken brother, Stephen, 64, said he'd been left angry at the basic failings and had taken legal action to ensure lessons were learned. God, can you imagine that? To just fall while you're doing something normal that you enjoy, biking or jogging, and to be unconscious and then injured, and for help to be. That's one of my biggest nightmares, scary situations. And one of the things that almost inspires me in a dark way as a horror writer is the idea of rescuers being so close, but just not looking the right way, or they can't hear you, and that's very common, where someone is trapped or their voice is gone or something, and like two ships in the night, they are missed. Now, these next two stories are something of a pair, and I'll have to be very careful how I discuss them. So for our first article in this pair about the Evol Day Attack, comes from NPR, and it says, an Uvalde coroner is haunted by identifying the bodies of children and an old friend. From Texas, Eulalio Lalo Diaz Jr. isn't always on call, but it was his turn to be at the helm as Uvalde's Justice of the Peace on the day a gunman massacred 19 children and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School in the deadliest school shooting in state history. The county is so small that the justice on call also acts as Uvalde's de facto coroner. He doesn't expect he'll ever be the same. It was my luck, my bad luck, Diaz told NPR, but I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Gosh, so he personally had to witness each and every one of these victims in the state they were in. And this community was small enough that he knew probably most of them, or many of them personally. Mostly 9 or 10-year-old children. And just imagine going into work, having to face something like that. It's incredible. And moving on to, this is the second story in our pair of stories for the Uvalde coverage. This one is less news and more just an eerie, strange coincidence. So this story is originally from 2018, and it reports that 2 Uvalde teens were recently arrested for conspiracy to commit murder after officers said they foiled a mass shooting plot the pair had schemed. In the press release, Uvalde Chief of Police Daniel Rodriguez said that a Morales Junior High School student 14 and a former Morales student 13 had specifically targeted numerous students in what they described as a plan to perform a mass casualty event against the school. And this, again, to clarify, this is more than 4 years ago, and our editor's note update clarifies that there is no connection between this incident and the 2022 shooting, but it bears mentioning that this small town in Texas has been in the news more than once. In this case, this first time it was a near miss. And finally, for our last story of today, Senegal families grieve lost babies after horrific hospital fire kills 11 infants. 3 weeks ago, Ramata Gueye died after giving birth to a son, Mohammed, 7 months into her pregnancy. The couple had been trying for a baby for 7 years, said Mustafa Cisse, a cousin of the father, who was among distraught family members of the dead infant who were gathered in front of the hospital in the Senegalese town of Tivaouane. It is heartbreaking to see him lose his wife and now his child, Mr. Cisse said. I can't even look him in the eyes. If he had other children, maybe, but it was his only child. Tivaouane Mayor Diopsi said on RFM radio that a short circuit had caused the fire late on Wednesday, and it had spread in less than 5 minutes. He said 2 nurses who escaped had not been able to save the babies in their incubators, all of whom died. Wow. I apologize for hesitating on that sentence, but it took me a minute to parse it. I wasn't there, and I can't imagine this fire, but can you imagine being a nurse and making that decision? We hope that it was an illogical decision and the babies truly could not be saved. It's horrifying to think that they might have just been in a panic and saved themselves and left these babies behind, but I wasn't there, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe the babies were beyond saving, but God, the guilt of that, I couldn't even imagine leaving anyone behind in a fire like that. And it's not the first time that something like this has happened, it seems. This subline says, Senegal's hospitals are failing. 4 babies died in a hospital fire in the northern town of Linguere last year. I would invite you all to read more about any of these stories if they are relevant or even just interesting, even if you'd like to know more about these terrible tragedies. Thank you for joining me, as always, and I'll catch you soon for the next darkest true crime headlines.